So our next speaker, Thomas Hooker, is going to do just that. He's going to talk about value stream management. So please welcome Thomas.
Thank you, sir.
All right, my friend.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for joining me here today in New York. Hope you've had a great show. We've had a great show, and I think I've had an opportunity to speak with many of you. I thought I would start out by showing everybody just a little bit about CollabNet, if you don't know who we are already. We were founded back in '99, and we're probably best known as the founders of Subversion, the enterprise version source control system. We're headquartered in South San Francisco, just a little bit south of the city. We have offices pretty much around the world. We have a fairly large development facility in Houston, Texas, one in Chennai, India, a smaller facility in Berlin, Germany, and of course we have the standard sales and support offices throughout the world. We have about 10,000 customers worldwide. Now, we're one of the founders of the open source movement back in the day. So a lot of those customers just come and get stuff for free from us. It's not something that they actually pay for. We do have a number of customers that do license our technology as well, which is also included in that number. Thank you very much. We have about 249, 250 employees around the world. And as I said, those are located throughout our global facilities. A little bit about me. This is me actually in the summer of 1989 with my best friend. I'm in the white hat, he's in the yellow hat. As you can see, I had much more hair back in those days. It was kind of an important time for myself. I had just graduated from university. And I had gotten my first job, which those of you that have kids in college, God, just waiting for that to happen. For the love of God, please, just get a job. But I have 2 in college and 1 on the way. So I'm going to have the trifecta, 3 in college at the same time. My first real job was a programmer. I got a job working for a large bank in their management training programming department, and went about, starting to apply that craft I had learned in college, writing computer code. Back in those days, we wrote C, not C++, but C. And I found out that although I did okay in university, programming is an art as well as a science. I was pretty good at the science. I was pretty poor at the art. And they ushered me into other responsibilities. So I moved into the dark side, engineering management, then into product management, product marketing, and corporate marketing. So that's a bit about myself. But I don't think there's never been a better time to be involved in writing software. And there's a lot of trends that are changing what's going on in our business. And I've listed those here on the slide, some things from Mark Andreessen, software is going to eat the world, Nadella at Microsoft. Every company is becoming a software company. Whether you are a pure play software player, you might be a 100-year-old business that manufactured something, and those things now need to become smart. And software is becoming a big part of your business. As we got this quote here from Forbes, open source and the role of open source is just growing. It wasn't that long ago. I've spent most of my career in systems management, B2B selling software, enterprise software. And oftentimes what we do in the Valley is we start little companies and we sell them to someone bigger. It wasn't that long ago we had successfully executed an exit to Cisco and selling the company to Cisco. And one of the things we had to do as part of that transaction was do a complete source code review and make sure we had no open source, because that was considered to be an IP problem. They didn't want any open source of any of our code. Now we embrace open source as how you get started quickly. You have an idea, you go find someone that's done something differently, you take that open source and you build upon top of that. Very common practice now in our business. And the last quote there is software is programming the world. One of the challenges, of course, is speed. And how do we innovate quickly? And as you can see here, some other quotes from some large commercial organizations. JP Morgan, I have more programmers than Google. GE, every company is becoming a software company. And this art of creating software is becoming very, very important to organizations. And our attitudes have changed about our customers and the way we treat our customers and our need to innovate. And this customer attitude is really what drives a lot of the innovation we have today. In the old days, when we talked about our customers, we might have said, hey, you can have anything you want as long as you want it black. Very famous man, Henry Ford, is purported to have said that. He'd sell you a car, you just had to take it the way he wanted to give it to you, which was black. That doesn't work anymore, and I think we're all have come to realize that the realities have changed. Customers are more empowered than they've ever been before. Mark Cuban, another fairly successful entrepreneur, basically is out there telling you, listen, if you're not making it easy for your customers, they're not going to be your customers very much longer. And part of that is because of the definition of customer and what customers want and what brand means. Increasingly, what we find in the business is customers have never been more empowered than they are today. Brand loyalty is basically evaporated. And we're as loyal to you as I am with my last experience. I travel a bit, and I'm constantly looking for a great travel app. And I download one and I use it, and a day later I delete it and I go look for the next one because I didn't get a good experience. So my loyalty is determined by my experience I have with you, not because my mom bought your product or my dad bought your product. It's what experience are you giving me? And that's the role that software is really becoming to play. More and more what we find is that experience is defined by software. So think of that for just a second and in how you interact with things. Maybe you checked into a hotel when you were here at New York. Maybe you're at a standard hotel where you just walked in and went to the front desk and gave them your name and credit card and you did that. Or maybe they actually sent you your room key and your confirmation to your phone and you just walked straight in. You never talked to a person. The experience was through the software. That is an example of how software is creating innovation and driving that customer experience for us increasingly. Creating great customer's experience isn't just a nice to have, though. It is also something that's good for your bottom line. Here are some examples. This came from Forrester, actually, of what customer experience can mean to your customers. And as you can see here, if you can just improve it by a fraction, 1%, how much money that could be to you and mean to your business and your bottom line. In the luxury automobile sector, that could be up to $118 million. Retail banks, $59 million. And increasingly, once again, it's the software that drives that customer experience. That's the thing we interact with the most, is the software. Before the person talks to you or you speak to the person, it's the software and the digital interaction that drives what you do. So with all this focus on customer experience and delivering software and great experiences quick, you would think that we had really aligned well with our business partners. And that as we have found ways to deliver software much faster, that those ways have actually translated in the business being happier with us. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. The business is a very needy beast that needs to be fed. And as you can see here in this survey from Forrester in Q1 of 16, when they asked business leaders, are you happy with the pace of innovation, with changes that have come out, only 4% say they're very happy. 15 are very satisfied. 40 are somewhat dissatisfied. So over half of the business leaders are dissatisfied with the pace of innovation. But we continue to innovate faster and faster. And you have to stop and ask yourself, well, why is that? Why are they so dissatisfied when we've gone to extreme lengths to actually be faster? I mean, back when I got out of college, we now call it waterfall. Back in the day, we didn't call it waterfall. It was simply how we wrote code. We had great visibility into what we were going to write. We did these giant PRD, MRD documents and huge binders with Venn diagrams in them, and we'd go to the business, and the business would sign, and we would go out and go away and start building this software. And there was at one point in time where we all agreed to what we were going to build, and we'd run off to go build it. Well, what happened in the interim of that was, technical debt and things come in, and the code kind of morphs over this way. The business keeps running, and the code morphs over, their desires morph over that way. We show up 8 months later to show you what we've built, and we have this gap. And then we have to spend 4 months to close that gap. And we said, there has to be a better way to do this. So we started to come up with better ways to do this. And the business continues to want us to find better ways to do this. And why is that? What drives the business? What's driving them is this right here, this concept of disruption. That the graph on the far right is showing you, do you think your business has been disrupted or is going to undergo disruption? And you can see across the board the answer is yes. And the challenge the business has is this one right here. The question is, are you ready for this disruption? And what role are you going to play? Are you going to be someone who disrupts, or are you going to be disrupted? And companies that are doing a really good job out there being the disruptors have a very common trait. So let's have a look at some of those. And that trait is these companies tend to act like software companies. They innovate like software companies. They use constructs like software companies to become disruptors. Look at the industry. Automobiles, let's pick Ford. Don't want to pick on Ford. I know they made a very big investment into a platform, Pivotal. They're very interested in being able to control the content that goes into that vehicle. They don't want to just be a stupid endpoint and have someone else own all the content in the automobile. But look at Tesla as the disruptor. And they produce a car, they sell you that car. I don't know if anybody here owns one. It's quite fabulous in a lot of ways. One of the ways it's great in traffic, that self-driving feature, I got to tell you, it's really nice, especially if you're only going to go 9 miles an hour anyway across that bridge. Why have to pay attention all the time? But it's that innovation of the software, the technology interface that really sets that car apart. It's not the performance, it's not the fit and finish, it's not the look. It's what happens to you in the car with the technology. But it's not just something like automotive. Think about entertainment right now. I'm listing Sky's TV here from the UK. You could also just as easily say ABC. Many of us can remember you came home, you wanted to watch television, you watched whatever ABC or Sky TV decided you were going to watch at that time. Netflix changed that. You now choose what you want. You stream what you want. You binge watch what you want. You watch what you want when you want to watch with a lot of digital entities out there. Hospitality, we talked a little bit about checking into a hotel. Think about what Airbnb has done. You don't even need a hotel anymore. You might come to San Francisco and I might rent you my spare room and make it very seamless for you to do that. So there's a lot of options out there in the hospitality industry. Shopping. I'm listing here British Home Stores, a vulnerable British entity. They were in business for over 100 years. They were, I guess, closest to maybe Bed Bath & Beyond in the United States. They sold linens and sheets. They're out of business now. Because when you think about buying things like that, if you don't need it today, Amazon will ship it to you in 2 days. So, why not just order it from Amazon? And they'll take it back if they need to take it back. So once again, that has really, that company has acted like a disruptor into the retail sector and how we go about doing retail. The last one I have here is transportation, taxis to Uber or Lyft. Now I know this isn't the best city to use that example. There's kind of 2 cities I travel to on a regular basis that taxis actually work fairly well. New York City is one of them. The other one is London. Otherwise, though, most of the time you try to get a taxi, you can't find one and they don't know where they're going. You get a cab in San Francisco, the first question they're going to ask you is, where would you like to go? Second question they're probably going to ask you is, how do you get there? So you're kind of wondering what their value proposition is for you. You just Uber. That's just the way it works. But these companies, as I said, have started to act like software companies, and that's part of the disruption they bring. And part of that disruption is how we innovate and how we innovate quickly. So as I said, we had this old waterfall process, and it still works very, very well in a lot of things. If you have a very stringent upfront requirement that you're going to build to, oftentimes it may be something like an embedded systems, waterfall process works very well. But by and large, we've moved to a new set of processes to get that speed. The first one is really agile. And we've gone out and we've started to adopt agile processes. We, don't want to be too self-serving. We do have a very large agile training business as well. So we do train a lot of Scrum Masters, go out and teach a lot of agile principles to businesses. One of the really interesting things we've seen in our business is a lot of the attendees of our classes are now not technology. It's other parts of business, trying to understand how I can take agile principles to that part. The biggest single training session I think we did last year was actually for the finance department of a very large automobile company who really wanted to know how they could break down the walls, get teams together, create new vehicles, be more innovative in the financing of their vehicles for their customers. And they thought agile processes were a real way to go. So if you go out and you want to get speed, typically the first thing you're going to go do is you're going to go out and you're going to get some people trained up and you're going to start bringing agile processes into your business. The next thing we started to do and we've done is we've adopted agile processes and coding. That kind of takes us into CI, which takes us into CD, and kind of before you know it, we're doing DevOps. Because as we break things up and we deliver smaller chunks and throw things over the fence more, we really start to understand, the need to bring people together. And we start creating smaller teams, and we start curating teams that are more synergistic around the goals we're doing and making sure we're aligned. But the truth of the matter is, we build these tool chains, right? But we don't really build this one big tool chain. That's not really what happens, what we observe in our businesses. What we do as a part of this process in enabling our teams is we build lots of tool chains. And we empower those teams to go out and start to innovate, but pick the tools they want to pick. This is really prevalent on the development side of the house, not so much on the operations side of the house, as those tools typically have some fairly hefty price tags, and a lot of the tools on the development side of the house are actually open source or free. So there's a lot greater variation there. But what you end up with is with lots of teams choosing lots of tools and different tool chains. And what we gain out of this process is really fabulous. We really gain speed, and we learn to become much faster. We commit more code more frequently. We have more builds. We deploy more builds. We've gotten much faster at the art of innovation. But what we kind of gave up in that process was visibility. You think back to the old days when we had decided what we were going to build before we built it. We had great visibility into what we were building, where it was in the process. We had people in meetings and walked around and we tracked progress. We reported those up on a weekly or daily basis. Now with DevOps, oftentimes we agree we're going to start building before we even really know what the outcome's going to be. And that's kind of part of the process. We kind of figure it out along the way. But we've lost that visibility. And that's created some problems in our business. That are we building the right things? And are those things actually adding value to the business? And that question becomes very relevant to the business leader. When you start to go, when you talk to a business leader and you say, we deployed 5 times things today. 5 times, that's great. And the business leader's like, so? I mean, what did that mean? Because businesses typically judge performance on 2 not similar axes. One is risks. Are you going to reduce risks? And businesses are big about reduction in risk. They do not want to find themselves on the front page of the New York Times. The other one, and really the king, is always revenue. Are you driving revenue? Are these changes you're doing, all this activity you have, is that actually driving revenue to the business? And can we measure that revenue? And that's when we start to come into the components of DevOps and what we call the 5 C's, which is the C, of course, you can see here is continuous, that this activity is continually taking place, but the question becomes, is it the right activity? Can we actually measure what we're doing? Because we know, and I think, everybody agrees with this, success is by measuring. I think it was Lord Kelvin that originally said something along the lines of, if you want to improve it, you better be able to measure it. Because if you can't measure it, it's just a guess if you're actually able to improve anything. And this is where value stream management really comes into play in the DevOps movement of how can you actually string out the work stream that's being done in one of these chains and measure it. And how can you compare them across other work streams? And then how can you align that to what the business wants you to do? And that's what value stream management starts to become about. It's about measurement, and it's also about showing the audience what they want to see based on who they are. If you are engineering or IT operations, the things you want to see are not the same things that the senior executive staff wants to see. But increasingly what we do know is that everybody wants to be able to monitor and measure the activity that's taken place and align that to doing the key things and the important things and not just doing a lot of little tiny tasks. And it comes down to, I'm sure everybody here had the same or of a similar class in college where you got I think it was a psychology class where the guy gets the big pickle jar and puts the sand in it, and then he puts the little pebbles in it, and then the big rocks don't fit. And then they turn it upside down and put the big rocks in first, and then the pebbles, and then you take the sand. And interestingly, almost everything fits. Because it was a matter, of course, of putting the big things in first. So make sure you're focused on the big things. Of course, that lesson at the time was about life. Worry about the big things in your life. Don't worry about the little things. There's a great set of books about the small things, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of what we do with value stream management. What are the key things to measure? You don't have to measure everything you're doing, but you should pick out those key things and start to measure them. Now, everybody might not be familiar with this concept of value stream management. So let me graph it for you real quick. And compare it against some other things you are probably very familiar with. You can see at the very top there, the blue line, we've got continuous integration. It's at an equilibrium. It's very well understood. We all kind of can agree about it. Application release automation is in a big growth phase. That market grows at about 20% a CAGR. As you've gone to do CI and CD, and we can actually start to deliver code quicker, the question becomes, how can you deploy that code? And it overwhelms the scripts your team might be using, so you go buy an ARA tool, and that allows you to move it forward. You can see that value stream management sits at the very start of the creation. And the question kind of becomes, well, where did this come from? We understand that it's about, measuring business value and how important that is, but where did the concept really come from? The concept actually, interestingly enough, comes from manufacturing. Lean manufacturing is where it really comes from. And it's really credited to Toyota Motor Corporation. And the first value stream map actually is purported to have been a document that Toyota actually created to explain to their vendors the role they were playing in the manufacturing process. So as auto manufacturers started to outsource more and more things and not build things themselves, they needed to align these suppliers to what they were doing and explain the value they were creating in the system and the importance of being on time, of course, because they were driving to the just-in-time inventory system. And if the steering wheel isn't ready, when the steering wheel is supposed to go on, the line stops and value is lost. So that was really the genesis of where it came from. But what it does is provides us in the high-tech world and in the software world the ability to create a very similar chain, understand the individual steps we're going through, understand where the work is, how much WIP is in our system, and to measure that and understand the value we're pushing through our system and how much value is locked into the system at any given time. Here's a quick example of what one would look like. I won't I won't bore you by walking you through all of this. You can go and Google this and pull all these documents up pretty quickly. But it's really, as you can see, all about understanding the processes of your development organization, the people that are conducting those roles, and what's important to you to measure. And that's really what we're driving here with the value stream management concept. I'm going to quickly move on. I can see I'm down to about 5 minutes here, and I wanted to leave a couple minutes left. So I didn't want this to be a giant product pitch. If you'd like more about my specific product, feel free to stop by our booth. I'm there with some of my smarter individuals and from the technical side as well. This should look fairly familiar to you. This is a basic development process. You can see we have some planning. You know, we do that through epics and stories now and create some tasks. We go write some code. We build that code, do some testing of that code. Then we produce it. We move it over into production, and we monitor it, and we operate it. Used to be, this was a very stately process. Now, as I said, we've broken it up. Here are some of the tools you might be using in that process. You might have chosen any number of these. There's a lot more than what I've shown here, but this is a representative of a number of tools that might be out there that you might be using. And when you think about that, as I said, you're now creating these value streams, and what we've done is we've lost visibility. So if you think about it for a second, you can take that U diagram and lay it out flat. And each one of these two streams here just represents nothing more than a value stream. This is a work effort that I have some service or application that a team is pushing through these discrete steps using these products. And what we can start to do with this is measure things about that workload. And that's kind of what our product allows you to do. You can see here, one of the nice things I'm doing on this, this chart at the very top is I'm showing you how you can compare dissimilar things. So we could pick this service here, order fulfillment. And we can see from plan commit to deploy, it takes 31 days. That's pretty interesting. It's taken us 31 days to get it all the way to get the value at the end. A more interesting stat, if you look at this a little deeper, is you look at the deployment frequency there, and it says 12. That means we're actually deploying 12 times a day. Well, think about that. If it takes 31 days to have a plan, a service ticket open, that's going to be a set of tasks, and then 31 days later I'm going to deploy it, but I have 12 deployments happening in a day, how much WIP do I have in my system? That's a lot of work in progress. Why? Why is there so much work in progress? Where is it? Where is it stuck? Where is it moving quickly? These become the type of questions that visibility gives you. And you can start to ask these questions and go figure them out and understand where things are stuck, where you can improve things, and how you can get things moving faster. And how much intrinsic value do you have locked into your system right now? Because just like an automobile manufacturer, until the car is on the lot and someone can buy it, the company gets no value out of it. It's all just work in progress. So you have to get the things out. You can't get them out if you don't see them going through. That is one of the things this does for you. I have a product, it does it. So how does it do it rapidly? I have an integration layer with a series of adapters, and I talk to all these tools. What I really do is I consume their events. So I see the events that are taking place, and that's how I follow the work. And as the work goes through, you do a code commit, you have a build commit item, you have a deployment commit item. I consume that event. I also have a automation engine that allows you to orchestrate things. So for instance, in an example here, I might say, I just saw a production release happen of a key application. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail in the first 30 minutes. So you know what? I want to go tap App Dynamics on the shoulder and say, turn up logging high there and grab everything about this for the next 30 minutes so I can see how well it works. Then turn it off after 30 minutes happens. So you can start to orchestrate things that take place in the system by consuming all these events. It's nice. The dashboard provides the visibility. I just got a sample dashboard of things that we decided we cared about. This is very customizable, and that once again gets down to those views that different people want to see different things, and you can start to show them that data. The types of information you show the ops manager is not the same type of information you want to go show the CIO. Those are two different types of information of what they care about. It's very easy to create these in our tool. It's primarily just a matter of dragging and dropping the tool chain. So we have a palette of tools that we support. You just take that tool, you drop it down, that creates a basic tool chain. You do the connections, a little bit of scripting, and it's off and going. So we take a lot of the hard work out of it. As I said, it gives you a great way to look at the health of the business and to compare dissimilar things. The very fact that this pet store application takes 24 days to deploy compared to the order fulfillment taking 31, that's interesting. Do you care about that? I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's for you to decide, but now you can decide if you do care or not care because you can see it. And as I said, there's an orchestration engine at the very bottom of this that allows you to create some pretty complicated rules to automate things and orchestrate the tool chain. We don't try to replace the tools you use, so we drop you down into that tool. If you have an exception you got to go deal with, and this one I'm dropping you down into a Jenkins console. So it's not like we try to rip and replace the tools. We integrate with the tools you have. And we do give you that high-level reporting and ability to monitor what's going on in the system, as I've said several times. This is just another example of a dashboard. As you can see, this one is run by exception management. That things in red mean you better go look at it because you've got a trigger in there that says there's a problem. You don't need to look at everything. You just need to look at the key things and the key things having problems. That's the last slide I have. I do want to thank everybody. I have gone over by 1 minute and 22 seconds. I apologize for that. So I'm not really going to have time for questions. I will be back at the booth. We're over by the coffee stand booth, kind of that 100 roll. So I encourage you to stop in and have a chat if you'd like to. Thank you very much.